This is the culmination of years of training!
I can never keep to a consistent schedule with these, can I? Well, doesn't matter. I'm going ghost! 3, 2, 1, go! Woo! Hello, fellow ghoulies of the digital world. Jenny Blaze here. And welcome back to Monstober. If you couldn't tell by the voice, this week we are going to be talking about ghosts. Now, initially this was going to be a more generic week where I basically talk about all types of undead, but after my friend Jordan told me that seemed a bit too broad, and admittedly I gotta agree, there's so many different ways to be undead, you know, because there's zombies, there's skeletons, heck, vampires count as that as well. So I decided to narrow it down to just ghosts this time. So, what is a ghost exactly? Well, obviously all of you know what a ghost is. I mean, it's a ghost, you know, the spectral form, spirits of the dead, come to haunt the mortal realm after they have died. But at the same time, it's interesting what isn't a ghost but still has ghost-like properties. And I think that's one thing that I want to go briefly into, is just the kind of things that ghosts can do. Like, clearly they are not of the mortal plane, and thus they kind of phase through reality, essentially. And honestly, it's an interesting thing to think about when it comes to ghosts, because they definitely function on a different plane of reality than mortals do, but they're still able to interact in a sense. And it's interesting that media kind of takes that route, and especially when it comes to, like, history, because history is full of all kinds of ghosts. Like, I believe as far back as, like, Sumerian mythology that ghosts existed in the world. I'm not sure if there are any, but I know at least there are a bunch of Greek ghosts. Like, heck, the spirits of the underworld could be considered ghosts in and of themselves, you know? Just not specifically said as such, you know? Because for as long as ghosts have existed, there's been this concept of souls, and what it means to have a soul, and what a soul really is. Now, I don't want to get super philosophical here, because we're here to talk about ghosts, but it is really interesting how many different ghosts there are in ancient times. I mean, Shakespeare was talking about a bunch of them. We've got the ghost of Banquo from Macbeth, we've got Hamlet's father in Hamlet, and just like, and even looking beyond Shakespeare, we look at the 3 ghosts from A Christmas Carol, though at the same time, those are less ghosts and more elemental spirits. But then again, it ties back into the fact that, you know, not everything that's ghost-like is ghosts. For example, let's look at the ghosts from Pac-Man. Very basic and stuff, but while they do look like ghosts, I don't think that, unless you look at the Pac-Man The New Adventures cartoon, is it really ever said that the ghosts are actually the departed souls of humans, or whatever the Pac people are? Honestly, I kind of look back to Pac-Man World 3 and how the ghosts come from the spectral realm, you know? And it kind of just makes me think, oh, they're just inhabitants of the spectral realm, essentially, you know? Of course, I can't go into ghosts without talking about Ghostbusters. One of the coolest movies of the 1980s, and definitely made busting feel good. Like, I really loved the original Ghostbusters movie, though at the same time, I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know how well it holds up. One movie that I haven't seen, though, but I have seen a lot of clips of and really enjoy the clips that I have seen is Ghostbusters 2. I really need to give that one a watch at some point, but it's like, I really like that they inject a little bit more humor into things, because, you know, the whole thing with Ghostbusters is it's kind of goofy. I do like that it is light horror, but at the same time, I prefer when it's a little bit more comedic, you know? Heck, you look at Castlevania, and, like, while that series is very much horror-based, you know, you got the characters cracking jokes and stuff, but we're not here to talk about Castlevania, we're here to talk about ghosts. And honestly, there's something a little silly about ghosts. I really enjoy that. Like, you look at Casper the Friendly Ghost, and you see how Casper and his three uncles interact, and it's honestly really fun and interesting. But yeah, it's like, it's an interesting thing of what a ghost means and what counts as a ghost, because things with ghost powers that aren't considered ghosts, you can still consider ghosts in a sense. Like, for example, I already brought up Pac-Man and its whole thing, but we also have things like the Ghost Wisp from Sonic Colors and stuff like that. That these are very... Actually, the Wisps in general show traits of ghost-like properties, where they basically are able to phase through things, and I mean, I guess you could consider empowering Sonic as some form of possession, essentially. And honestly, I just find it interesting in a sense. Now, I can't go into ghosts without talking about one of my favorite TV shows of my childhood, and that is Danny Phantom. And oh boy, it is very interesting looking at Danny Phantom nowadays, and just, especially with a bunch of the stuff that we know about Butch Hartman and how he's not exactly the nicest person, and kind of swindled a lot of the fan community and basically broke our trust. But it's like, even then, I still really enjoyed Danny Phantom, because I really enjoy that sort of aspect of this person who gains ghost powers through spectral energies. And it's kind of what I meant by, like, you know, gaining these ghost-like abilities despite the fact that you're not really a ghost. Because while Danny is a ghost, like half ghost essentially, I think that it's more the fact that he was empowered by spectral entities to take a ghost-like form, compared to the actual ghosts in Danny Phantom. But then again, considering that Butch Hartman basically retconned Danny Phantom's ghosts to basically being spectral monsters and not actually the deceased souls of people, which you kind of fly in the face of your own continuity, Butch, considering that one of your characters, Desiree, legitimately had a backstory where she was human. I swear, sometimes it seems like corporate producers are up their own ass, I swear to God. But yeah, I don't think it takes away from the fact that Danny Phantom is a very fun and interesting series that is really enjoyable, you know? And I guess that kind of brings me to one of the other things that I want to go into a small rant about things, because I found out recently, or I say recently, but a few months ago, that there was a new book released that was a sequel to Danny Phantom called A Glitch in Time, and it was very interesting, and I remember watching a video of somebody doing a comic dub of it. And they ended up pulling a reboot button ending on that. Like, seriously, what the hell? Why would you do that? It's like, just, like, I get that a lot of people have issues with Phantom Planet. I personally didn't have an issue with that finale, because I found it a fun and fulfilling end to the story, you know? Like, Danny was finally able to reveal himself to his family and be a hero to the people, essentially, you know, and that Jack Fenton was able to prove that ghosts were real, and it's just like, it was a happy ending for everybody. Why'd you have to ruin it by basically being like, oh yeah, everybody forgets that Danny is now Danny Phantom, and also now there's a ghost hunting squad that's specifically going after Danny Phantom. Why would you do this? I don't understand. Honestly, if you want a better continuation of Danny Phantom, just go read 5 years later, or watch the comic dub series that's done by Ink Tank. Like, honestly, Ink Tank, or Kuro the artist, knows what he's talking about when he's talking about Danny Phantom and Ben 10 and stuff like that. And you know what, actually that brings me to another one that's very interesting, is talking a little bit about Ben 10 and one of the scariest ghosts out of all of these stories, and that is Ghost Freak. Like, holy crap, the Ghost Freak arc in Ben 10 is so fascinating, because it's like this ghost-like entity that was inside the Omnitrix comes out of the Omnitrix and starts terrorizing Ben. And it's like, that is really fun and interesting. Like, Man of Action, you really knew what you were doing. And, while I haven't watched the new Ben 10 series, like, I would say that up until Omniverse, like, it was pretty good. I know that Omniverse is a bit controversial, but I still really enjoyed it a lot. Honestly, it brought Ben 10 kind of back to back to basics, essentially. And also, I find it interesting that they end up bringing back Ghost Freak for that. Like, they show that, there's a whole bunch of spooky planets with a vampire alien and a werewolf alien. I mean, to be fair, that was already alluded to in the original Ben 10, when it's like, oh hey, yeah, these are all aliens. They're not actually werewolves and mummies and Frankensteins. And while I would, cry foul at that, it does work, because it basically means that it gives an explanation for these things, and it sets the theming for Ben 10. Now, admittedly, I'm talking more about Ben 10 and aliens than I am about ghosts, but it's like, I do find it interesting of the kind of abilities that ghosts can have, and I think that Danny Phantom and Ben 10 kind of show that off of, like, with Ben 10 and with Ghost Freak, we kind of get this sort of spooky side to ghosts. It's really fun, like, sure, there's the possession abilities, but also the fact that, like, Ghost Freak's true form is this horrifying monster that ends up, like, frickin' blowing up Zombozo, like, seriously. Also, how the heck did he come back to life for Ultimate Alien? I do not understand that at all. I mean, at least later on in the series, they made him a zombie, so it's like, Man of Action, care to explain that continuity issue? But then for Danny Phantom, you get a lot of really fun and interesting bits that kind of play off of the ghost abilities, in a sense. Because here's the thing about ghosts, like, they're not corporeal beings, so you can kind of do whatever you want. Obviously you have the standard, walk through walls, disappear, and fly, being much more unique than the other guys. Okay. Anyways. But you also have stuff like, ice breath, essentially, or basically, being able to freeze over things. I think that, Ghostbusters actually was trying that for its newest movie, Frozen Empire. I hear that movie wasn't as good, but then again, I had no interest in seeing Ghostbusters Afterlife, because it looked like it was just kind of a gritty reboot of the original Ghostbusters, or, well, gritty continuation, not really a reboot, but you get what I mean. I don't know, maybe, sound off in the comments if Ghostbusters Afterlife is actually worth watching, and if I'm just being a curmudgeon about it. But anyways, we get other things too, like being able to duplicate yourself. I mean, like, if you're able to split your consciousness between two different tasks, why not make a second body, am I right? If you don't really follow the laws of physics. And yeah, I guess I just find ghosts really interesting. It's really interesting seeing how you know, there's evidence in the real world of ghosts not actually existing and stuff like that, but even then, there's some real spooky stuff, and I would say that ghosts are probably the spookiest of all of the monsters that we've talked about so far. Because, I mean, vampires and werewolves, they have their whole, like, general panache to them, but ghosts are actually legitimately scary. You can find them pretty much everywhere and stuff like that. And I find that cool. I definitely find that really cool, and I find it interesting how universal they can be, because everybody knows what a ghost is, you know? Admittedly, I feel like I'm starting to circle back on myself, so I think I'm gonna end things off here. This is probably gonna be one of the shorter ones, because I didn't really know what really to talk about. I had a couple things that I did want to talk about, but that's about it. But either way, come back next week, because we're going to get to the final part where we are going to be... Actually, I think I spoiled it in the earlier when I was talking about werewolves. Oops. But y'all know what was coming. For those who know me super closely, they know what my favorite monster is. So come back next week for Halloween as we talk about werewolves. And I promise I'll have plenty of stuff to talk about there. So until next time, this is the Tiefling of Trouble, Jenny Blaze, saying, shine on, ghoulies and ghoulettes.